It was nearly 2 in the morning when the silence of our bedroom pressed down like a weight I could no longer carry. My husband, Declan Rhodes, lay beside me, breathing with the rhythm of someone utterly at peace. I wanted that peace, but it wasn't mine. His phone buzzed once on the nightstand, the glow slicing through the darkness. I told myself not to look, that it was nothing, but my tired eyes betrayed me, and in 1 second my world cracked open. My silver comet, I miss you already. Thank you for 2 unforgettable nights. The glass of water nearly slipped from my hand. 2 nights. 2 nights he had sworn he was in Atlanta at a summit, not wrapped in someone else's arms. I stumbled into the bathroom, gripping the sink as if it could anchor me. A stranger stared back from the mirror, pale skin, hollow eyes, lips trembling with the words, 20 years, Declan? 20 years? That was the moment everything I thought I knew about my life began to unravel. If you believe in truth, resilience, and the messy ways life forces us to rebuild, please subscribe, like, and share this story. Your support keeps me brave enough to continue. Before the betrayal carved its mark across my life, I lived inside a rhythm that seemed unshakable. My name is Madelyn Pierce, and for 20 years, I believed in the story Declan and I had written together. We met in the hallway of our old high school, 2 kids with nothing but borrowed dreams and restless ambition. He was charming, a little reckless, with that smile that could quiet storms. I was steady, practical, the girl who always had her nose in a book. People said we balanced each other. Maybe we did, for a while. Those early years weren't easy. We didn't come from families with deep pockets or safety nets. Declan worked construction jobs during the day, pouring sweat into other people's foundations, while I waited tables at night to scrape together rent for our first apartment. The paint peeled, the pipes rattled, and the neighbors argued through thin walls, but to us it felt like a kingdom. We were young, and love filled the cracks money couldn't. When Connor was born, everything shifted. Bills multiplied, sleep evaporated, and Declan's shoulders seemed to carry the weight of 3 men. I returned to teaching part-time, balancing lesson plans with midnight feedings. There were nights I would grade essays with one hand while cradling our son with the other. And yet, we told ourselves it was worth it. Each struggle was an investment in a future where things would be easier. Then came Elena, soft curls and wide eyes that stole Declan's heart the moment she arrived. With 2 children, the chaos doubled, but so did the laughter. Saturday mornings meant pancakes, sticky fingers, and cartoons humming in the background. We had our rituals, birthday cakes baked from scratch, long drives through the Blue Ridge Parkway in autumn, family board game nights where Declan's competitive streak always came out. From the outside, we looked solid, almost enviable. But inside, hairline fractures were forming. Declan began chasing promotions, climbing ladders that took him farther from home. His hours stretched late into the night, his phone buzzing with emails during dinner, his mind always half a step away. I told myself it was for us, that his ambition was the engine pulling our family forward. But there were nights when I lay awake, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, feeling more like a roommate than a wife. I remember one Thanksgiving when the power went out. The kids panicked at first, but I lit candles, pulled blankets onto the floor, and turned it into an adventure. We roasted marshmallows over the gas stove and told stories until the power returned. Declan wasn't there. He was stuck at the office finishing quarterly reports. The kids laughed that night, their faces glowing in candlelight, but I felt the emptiness beside me. That absence became a companion I could never quite shake. Through it all, I leaned on Isla Harrington, my best friend since college. She was the one who stood beside me at my wedding, the godmother to my children, the person I trusted with my fears when Declan's distance grew. Isla had a way of making chaos seem manageable, of telling me I was stronger than I believed. If I had cracks in my foundation, Isla was the plaster that kept me from falling apart. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I see the warning signs I ignored, the late nights that stretched into excuses, the moments when Declan smiled at his phone in a way he hadn't smiled at me in years, the way Isla sometimes changed the subject when I spoke of my loneliness. But in those days, I clung to hope. I clung to the belief that 20 years meant something indestructible. I see now that the hardships we survived together weren't enough to keep the storm from breaking through. They only made the eventual collapse more devastating, because when you build your life on trust, every secret becomes a wrecking ball. And Declan had already picked up the hammer. By the time betrayal knocked the wind from my chest, life on the outside looked polished, almost enviable. Declan Rhodes had become the kind of man people nodded to in grocery store aisles. Pressed suits, confident stride, the one neighbors asked for business advice. He had climbed from construction sites to a management position at a growing firm, his name etched on quarterly reports, his calendar filled with conferences and flights. And me? I had finally carved out a rhythm as a teacher. The classroom had always been my sanctuary, rows of eager faces and the scent of dry erase markers anchoring me when the rest of life felt unstable. My students joked about how I could recite Shakespeare like a pop song, or how I made grammar rules sound like battle plans. They didn't see the exhaustion under my eyes, but they gave me something I couldn't find anywhere else. A sense of purpose that was mine alone. Our home reflected the story we wanted the world to believe. A 2-story house with white shutters, rose bushes I planted myself, and a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon every December when Elena and I baked cookies. Family photos lined the staircase. Connor in his baseball uniform, Elena with her science fair ribbon, Declan with his arm draped casually around my shoulders. To guests, it looked like a picture of stability, a family weathering the years with grace. Even Isla Harrington admired it. She would lean against my counter, latte in hand, telling me how lucky I was to have a husband so ambitious, kids so bright, and a life so steady. And I believed her, or maybe I wanted to. I wanted to believe that the tired smiles, the quiet dinners where Declan's eyes stayed glued to his phone, were just symptoms of busy seasons. I wanted to believe that the life we had built, after years of hand-me-down couches and late-night bills, was finally paying off. There were moments when I felt it too. Like when we hosted neighborhood barbecues and Declan worked the grill, laughter booming as he flipped burgers. Or when he slipped expensive jewelry into a velvet box on our anniversary. His way of saying the words he rarely spoke. Or the night Connor hit his first home run and Declan actually made it to the game, his cheer carrying across the field as if he were the only parent in the stands. Those flashes of happiness stitched me to him, even as the thread frayed. They convinced me that everything was fine, that success had simply made us busier, not broken. I told myself that couples didn't survive decades without distance, that love was sometimes just quiet persistence. And yet, beneath the surface, I felt the hollowness. A kiss on the cheek in the morning instead of lips that lingered. Dinners where the silence hummed louder than conversation. Nights when I rolled over, reaching for warmth, and found only cool sheets. I filled the gaps with rituals, late-night grading, Sunday pancakes, painting the living room walls a brighter shade of yellow. I told myself these were the anchors of a good marriage, that as long as the house looked alive, the love inside it must be too. But now I know success can be a disguise. Shiny cars and polished resumes, laughter at neighborhood gatherings, even the perfectly iced birthday cakes. They can all be stage props hiding the cracks behind the curtain. In our case, the curtain was about to fall. And when it did, the illusion of stability would shatter so loudly, I'd wonder how I ever mistook it for real. The first time I said the words out loud, they tasted like ash on my tongue. Declan is cheating. I had called Isla Harrington, the one person I thought I could trust more than anyone, and asked her to meet me at our favorite cafe. The place smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, the same booth we had shared 100 times over years of secrets, laughter, and advice. Isla was already there, auburn hair swept over her blazer, smile as easy as always. She slid a latte toward me like nothing in the world had changed. "You look awful," she teased lightly. "Rough night?" I didn't even bother with pleasantries. My voice cracked too sharp. "Declan's cheating." For a moment, her face faltered, eyes flickering, fingers tapping against the mug like she couldn't find a place to rest them. Then came her words, careful, almost rehearsed. "Madelyn, what makes you think that?" I shoved the phone across the table. The message glowed like fire. "My silver comet, thank you for 2 unforgettable nights." Her lashes lowered quickly, too quickly, like shutters slamming against a storm. Maybe it's not what it looks like. Texts can be misinterpreted." "Don't," I snapped, my voice trembling but sharp enough to draw stares from nearby tables. I leaned closer, whispering now. "Don't soften this. Don't offend him." Her silence was heavy. Too heavy. My stomach twisted as I studied her fidgeting hands, the tightness around her smile. Why wasn't she furious for me? Why wasn't she spitting fire the way I needed her to? "You look uncomfortable," I whispered, my voice brittle. "Almost like you knew." Her eyes darted up wide, too wide. "Of course I didn't. I don't want you to do something you'll regret." "Regret?" My pulse pounded in my ears. "Regret what? Walking away from a liar?" She shook her head, too fast, like the words were slipping beyond her control. "No, I mean, Madelyn, I'm on your side. Always." But her tone was off, too smooth, too polished, like a line she'd practiced. I pushed back from the booth so abruptly the chair screeched across the floor. "I'm done. I'm taking the kids, and I'm leaving." Her hand shot out as if to grab mine, but stopped midair. She only whispered, "Are you sure?" The way she asked, too quickly, almost desperate, set something cold deep inside me. Whose side was she really on? "I've never been more sure," I said, flat, final. I left her there, latte untouched, eyes clouded. That night, I returned to the house only to grab Elena's schoolbooks. Declan had claimed he'd be buried in quarterly reports until late, so I thought the coast was clear. But the moment I turned the key in the door, I heard it. His voice, low and smooth. "Don't be nervous. She has no idea. And then, a voice I knew better than my own. Isla. The world tilted under me. My best friend. The woman who had held my secrets for 2 decades. I pressed myself against the wall as their footsteps crossed the foyer. His laugh, her sigh. The creak of the staircase, the same one Declan once carried me up on our wedding night. Now it groaned under their betrayal. Rage, or maybe sheer disbelief, propelled me forward. My hand shook as I gripped the banister, climbing step by trembling step. The bedroom door was ajar, golden lamplight spilling into the hallway. Voices, laughter, the rustle of fabric. I pushed the door open. Declan froze, shirt half undone, hair tousled. Isla stood beside the bed, her face pale, curls tangled, eyes wide with horror. "It's not what it looks like," Declan blurted. I tilted my head, my voice steady, terrifying even to my own ears. "Really? Because it looks exactly like my husband and my best friend about to betray me in my own bed." Isla's lips parted, then shut, trembling, silent. "Don't," I snapped when Declan stepped forward. "Don't you dare touch me! Don't you dare explain!" "You know what's funny?" I added, voice icy. "You two could have chosen any bed in this city, any hotel, any corner of the world. But you picked mine. Ours. Do you have any idea how deliberate that feels?" Neither spoke. Declan looked cornered, small. Isla looked like a ghost. I yanked the suitcase from the closet, stuffing clothes inside with shaking hands. "Here's how this goes. I'm leaving. Connor and Elena are coming with me, and the two of you." I glanced between them, disgust twisting my lip. "Congratulations. You deserve each other." Declan reached for me at the stairs. "Madelyn, wait, please. I love you. I love our family." "No," I said, my voice ablade. "You broke something that doesn't mend." I walked past the photos on the wall, past Elena's finger paintings, past every memory that now felt poisoned. Out the front door, into the night, and I didn't look back. The night I left the house with my suitcase, I thought the story was already written. Declan had betrayed me with Isla, and I was done. But betrayal is never that simple. It burrows under your skin, makes you question every detail of your life. By the time I reached my parents' place in Wilmington, my head was a storm. I replayed every conversation, every slip of the tongue, every late night at the office. I told myself I didn't need proof beyond what I had already seen with my own eyes. And yet, some stubborn part of me craved it. Because if you can prove the lie, then you know you aren't crazy. The first test came almost by accident. Declan called 2 days later, his voice honeyed with regret. "We need to talk," he said. "The kids deserve to hear the truth from us, not from whispers." I agreed to meet him at a diner halfway between our towns. When he arrived, his suit was immaculate, his tie knotted perfectly, but his eyes were bloodshot. He looked like a man rehearsing grief. I didn't give him the satisfaction of tears. Instead, I slid my phone across the table. The message glared up at him. "My silver comet, thank you for 2 unforgettable nights." He flinched, just barely, before recovering. "Madelyn, that could mean anything," he said softly. "A wrong number, a joke." I leaned back, studying him. "Say her name." His eyes flickered. "Whose?" "Isla." The fork in his hand clattered against the plate. For a heartbeat, silence held us. Then he shook his head, too fast, too forcefully. "You're imagining things. She's your friend." That was test number 1, and he failed spectacularly. After that, I began digging. Isla had always been meticulous with her calendar. I remembered how she bragged about using the same leather-bound planner every year, her handwriting looping perfectly across each page. When I returned to the house one afternoon to collect Connor's baseball gear, I found it sitting on the counter, as if daring me to look. I flipped through the pages, my pulse thundering. Most entries were ordinary: meetings, deadlines, brunches. But then I found it. 2 days blocked out with nothing but the initials DR circled twice. My breath caught. She had been careless. Still, I needed more. Because when people betray you, they try to gaslight you, make you doubt your instincts. I wanted undeniable evidence, so I went further than I ever thought I would. I called a friend of mine from college, Evelyn, who now worked as a paralegal in Raleigh. I asked her if she could pull hotel receipts under Declan's corporate card. "Are you sure you want to see this?" she asked. My voice was steady. "I need to." 2 days later, she emailed me scanned receipts. A hotel in Atlanta, yes. But 2 dinners charged to the room, 2 breakfasts. A second guest listed as I. Harrington. I printed the documents and tucked them into a folder, my hands shaking as though the paper itself burned. Meanwhile, Isla tried to reach me. Dozens of texts. "Please let me explain. It's not what you think. Can we meet just once?" I ignored them all. Silence was my only weapon, and I wasn't going to waste it on her excuses. But late at night, I would scroll through her messages, looking for cracks in her composure. They were always perfectly phrased, desperate but controlled. It made me wonder how long she'd been practicing lies. One evening, when Connor and Elena were asleep upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table with my father. He had been a quiet man most of my life, the type to fix leaky faucets and mow the lawn without saying much. But now he poured 2 cups of coffee and studied me with eyes that had seen too much. "You're running tests," he said simply, "looking for evidence." I nodded, ashamed. I know I should just walk away, but I can't stop. He stirred his coffee slowly. "When your mother suspected me of gambling years ago, she did the same. Checked receipts, followed me once. She needed proof before she could decide if she'd stay or go." I blinked at him, startled. "And?" He smiled sadly. "She found nothing, because I hadn't done it. But if she had, well, she would have known she wasn't crazy." He leaned forward, voice low. "You're not crazy, Madelyn." "Don't let them make you think you are." His words steadied me, because that was exactly what Declan and Isla wanted, for me to doubt my own eyes. The final test came the night I returned to the house alone. I told myself I only needed to grab more clothes for Elena. But in truth, I wanted to see if Declan had hidden anything. The house smelled the same. Coffee, faint cologne, but the air was heavy, as if it knew. I crept upstairs, my heart hammering, and opened the drawer of his nightstand. Beneath cufflinks and receipts, I found a small velvet pouch. Inside were 2 movie stubs from Raleigh, dated the same weekend he had claimed to be at a leadership summit in Atlanta. The names printed on the tickets? Isla, Harrington, and Guest. I sat on the edge of the bed, the very place I had found them together, and stared at the evidence. Every test I had run, every thread I had pulled, led to the same conclusion. The life I thought was mine had already been dismantled behind my back. When I left that night, I didn't just carry my suitcase, I carried proof. And proof has a way of sharpening grief into fury, of turning heartbreak into resolve. I knew then that this was no longer about surviving betrayal. It was about making sure they never twisted the story to make me doubt myself again. Once the first cracks appear, you can't stop yourself from pressing harder, widening them until the whole truth spills out. After catching Declan and Isla in our bedroom and running those small tests, I had enough to know betrayal was real. But my heart wasn't satisfied with suspicion in fragments. I needed evidence so clear, so undeniable, that even Declan's smooth excuses would collapse under its weight. Proof wasn't about saving the marriage. It was about saving my sanity. The folder I started keeping was plain black, the kind you could buy in any office supply aisle. But inside it grew heavier by the day, filled with hotel receipts, screen captures, scribbled notes. Every page was another nail in the coffin of the life I once thought indestructible. I hid it under a loose floorboard in my parents' guest room, the same way I'd once hidden love letters as a teenager. Only this time, it wasn't about romance, it was about survival. One morning, after dropping Connor at baseball practice and Elena at a friend's house, I drove past Declan's office. He had told me he'd be in meetings all day, but the parking lot told another story. His car wasn't there. I parked a block away and waited, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. 2 hours passed, and then I saw it. His silver sedan pulling in with Isla in the passenger seat. They laughed as they stepped out together, Isla's hand brushing his arm like it belonged there. I snapped a photo from my phone, the image grainy but damning. Another piece for the folder. Still, photos and receipts could be dismissed as misunderstandings. Declan could claim Isla was helping him with work, that dinners were business-related. I needed something harder to dispute. That's when Evelyn, my friend in Raleigh, suggested hiring a private investigator. "If you want to be free of doubt," she told me, "let someone gather the facts for you." At first, I resisted. It felt invasive, like admitting my life had turned into a crime scene. But betrayal already felt like a crime, so I finally agreed. The investigator's name was Jameson, a man in his 50s with a calm voice and sharp eyes. He promised discretion. "You'll get what you need," he said simply, sliding a contract across the table. I signed without hesitation. Within a week, he handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photographs too sharp to be denied. Declan and Isla holding hands in a hotel lobby. Declan brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. The two of them entering a room together at midnight and not leaving until morning. I stared at the pictures for a long time, nausea rising. Then I placed them in the folder. But evidence has a way of multiplying once you start looking. One evening, while Declan was still under the illusion I hadn't moved beyond suspicion, he sent me an email meant for a client. Only it wasn't for a client. The subject line read, "Thursday, same place?" The body contained nothing but an address and a time. I recognized the address immediately, the hotel from the receipts Evelyn had pulled. My pulse hammered as I forwarded the email to myself, printed it out, and slid it into the folder. Each artifact added another layer of armor to my resolve. Isla, meanwhile, kept trying to break through my silence. She showed up once at my parents' porch, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness, whispering my name like a plea. I didn't answer the door. I watched from behind the curtain as she clutched her phone, typed something, then erased it, her face twisted in regret, or maybe panic. For a fleeting moment, I remembered the woman who had laughed with me at midnight sleepovers, who had stood beside me on my wedding day. But then I pictured her in my bedroom with my husband, and the ache hardened into steel. She left after 20 minutes, shoulders slumped, and I wrote the date and time in the back of my folder. Documentation wasn't just about them, it was about me proving I hadn't imagined a single piece of this. The strangest part came weeks later, when I was unpacking boxes in my new place in Greenville. Among old notebooks and school projects, I found a shoebox I didn't remember packing. Inside were cassette tapes, labeled in Declan's handwriting from decades ago. Curiosity overcame me. I dug out an old player and pressed play. His young voice filled the room, filled with longing. "Isla, I don't know why you haven't answered, but I'll keep waiting. Please call me." "Please!" Each tape was the same: confessions, pleas, unreturned words. At the bottom of the box was a Polaroid photo. Declan and Isla as teenagers, leaning against a wooden fence, their faces lit with reckless joy. My stomach twisted. Their story hadn't begun with betrayal in adulthood. It had begun long before me, and some cruel fate had woven it back together at my expense. I placed the tapes and the photo into the folder, even though they weren't proof of the affair in the present. They were proof of roots that had grown underground for decades, only now breaking the surface. By the time the folder was full, I felt both heavier and strangely lighter. Heavier because every page confirmed the depth of their deception. Lighter because I finally had control. They could no longer twist the truth, no longer make me question my reality. Every lie Declan tried to spin could be countered by a receipt, a photo, a recording. One night, sitting alone at the kitchen table, I spread the contents of the folder across the wood. The receipts, the photos, the emails, the tapes, the Polaroid. It looked like evidence from a trial, and in a way, that's what it was. I wasn't preparing to convince a jury. I was preparing to convince myself that my instincts had been right, that my heartbreak had reason, that my life had shifted not because I was weak, but because others had chosen betrayal. When Connor padded into the room, rubbing his eyes, I quickly gathered the papers into a pile. "What's that, Mom?" he asked sleepily. "Just homework," I said softly, kissing his forehead and guiding him back upstairs. But inside, I knew the truth. This wasn't homework. This was the blueprint of my escape. Because evidence doesn't just confirm the past, it shapes the future. And mine was about to change forever. There's a moment in every betrayal story when grief hardens into something sharper. At first, all I could feel was pain, a hollow ache that stole my breath. But as the folder of evidence grew thicker, something inside me shifted. Sorrow gave way to clarity. Clarity demanded action. Action demanded a plan. Declan and Isla had written me out of my own life, but I wasn't going to vanish quietly. If they thought I would simply crumble, they had underestimated me. I started small. Retaliation, I realized, didn't have to be loud at first. It had to be deliberate. Every piece of evidence I collected wasn't just for my sanity. It was ammunition. I consulted Evelyn again, the paralegal, sliding the folder across her kitchen table late one night. She flipped through the photos, the receipts, the emails, her expression hardening. "You've got enough to bury him in court," she said simply. "Custody, assets, the house, you name it." The thought of legal retribution steadied me, but I wanted more than financial leverage. I wanted them to feel what I had felt, exposed, cornered, powerless. So I studied their patterns. Declan was predictable. Every Thursday night he claimed to work late. Every second weekend he traveled. Isla mirrored him, clearing her schedule with vague excuses. I realized their affair wasn't just reckless passion. It was a routine, disguised as professionalism. That routine became their weakness. The first layer of my plan was visibility. I began showing up in places they wouldn't expect. Once, I volunteered to help at Connor's baseball practice, knowing Declan sometimes swung by. When he arrived, smug in his sunglasses, I was already there, chatting easily with the coach. The flicker in his eyes when he saw me, caught off guard, stripped of control, was a small victory. Another time, I walked into the same cafe where Isla often worked on her laptop. I ordered coffee, sat at the table beside hers, and spread out a stack of grading. Every time she looked up, our eyes met. She shifted in her chair, restless, her hands trembling slightly as she typed. I didn't say a word. Silence was more unnerving than accusations. But the second layer required more precision. Declan had always prided himself on being respected at work. His reputation was his crown, his shield. So, when I discovered that several of the hotel charges were billed directly to his corporate account, I knew I had found the pressure point. I drafted a letter, professional, concise, supported by receipts, and addressed it to his firm's HR department. I didn't send it yet. Timing mattered. Timing would be everything. Meanwhile, Rowan Mitchell, yes, the man I had met that night at the diner, became an unexpected ally. He wasn't part of my revenge, not directly. But his steady presence gave me the courage to sharpen my edges. Over coffee one evening, I confessed, I want them to feel cornered, Rowan. I want them to know they didn't just wound me. They created an enemy. He didn't flinch. He only nodded. Then don't lash out blindly, he advised. Plan it like you'd plan a lesson, step by step, objective by objective. Strange how a man who sold pancakes at midnight could sound like a strategist. So I outlined it like a syllabus. Objective 1. Secure custody of Connor and Elena. Objective 2. Dismantle Declan's reputation. Objective 3. Expose Isla for who she truly was. Each step had dates, backup plans, contingencies. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt in control. I tested my strategy by releasing a small fragment of evidence. At a neighborhood gathering, casual as ever, I accidentally left my phone unlocked on the table. The damning text visible for a moment. Whispers spread like wildfire. By the end of the night, 3 different neighbors pulled me aside, murmuring sympathy. Declan and Isla thrived on secrecy. Stripping that away was like cutting their oxygen. The biggest blow, though, would come at the right moment. I decided it would be a Thursday, the night of their supposed meetings. I would confront them not with rage, but with precision. The folder of evidence would be my weapon, and the stage would be public enough to rob them of denials. I imagined Isla's face paling, Declan's voice cracking, as their double life unraveled under the weight of truth. But revenge is never just about the enemy. It's about reclaiming yourself. So I practiced my composure in the mirror, whispering the lines I would deliver. You thought you could lie to me. You thought I would stay quiet. But you forgot. I was listening, I was watching, and I was recording every step. The more I rehearsed, the steadier I became. By the time the day arrived, the plan was set. Every move had been calculated, every word chosen. Declan and Isla thought they had written me out of the story. They were wrong. I wasn't just back in it. I was about to take the pen and write the chapter they would never forget. Thursday nights had become their ritual. Declan would tell me about late reports. Isla would claim she was working from home, and the two of them would vanish into their secret world. But this Thursday, I was waiting. I had chosen the restaurant carefully, a sleek downtown place with just enough prestige to draw attention, but not enough privacy to let their whispers hide. My investigator confirmed the reservation under Declan's corporate account. Table for two, 8 o'clock. I dressed not in morning black, but in deep crimson, a color that drew eyes the moment I walked through the door. When I entered, the host asked for my reservation. I smiled coldly. "I'm meeting Mr. Rhodes. He's expecting me." The host led me across the dining room, and there they were. Declan in his perfect suit, Isla leaning close, their heads almost touching. For a heartbeat, neither of them noticed. Then Isla's eyes widened, her fork slipping against the plate. Declan's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. "Mind if I join you?" I asked sweetly, sliding into the empty chair before they could answer. The room's chatter dimmed, as though the air itself sensed tension. Declan cleared his throat. "Madelyn, this isn't not what it looks like?" I cut in, my voice sharp but calm. I pulled the black folder from my bag and laid it on the table between us. "I brought receipts. Would you like to pick which one we start with? The hotel in Atlanta? The dinner in Raleigh? Or perhaps the photos of you two entering a room together after midnight?" Gasps fluttered from nearby tables. Isla's face drained of color, her hands trembling in her lap. Declan's bravado cracked. "We should talk about this privately," he muttered, his voice low. "No," I said firmly. "You created this in the shadows. Tonight, it steps into the light." I opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table, Declan reaching for Isla's hand in a hotel lobby. "Do you see this? This is not a misunderstanding. This is not a business meeting. This is betrayal." Isla tried to speak, but her voice caught. "Madelyn, please." I turned my gaze on her, steady and cold. "You were supposed to be my friend, godmother to my children. You could have chosen anyone in the world, but you chose him, and not only him, you chose my home, my trust, my life. Was the thrill worth it?" She looked down, tears brimming but unshed. Declan leaned forward, desperation creeping into his tone. "Madelyn, I still love you. I made mistakes, but we can fix this." I laughed once, bitter and sharp. "Fix this? You broke something that doesn't mend." 20 years, Declan. 20 years I stood beside you, through debt, through long nights, through everything. And for what? So you could throw it all away for a handful of lies? Around us, diners pretended not to stare, but their curiosity burned. Isla's hands shook as she reached for her purse. "We should go," she whispered. "Yes," I said, rising from my chair. "Go, crawl back into the shadows where you belong. But understand this, I'm not the one who'll be hiding anymore. You are. Your names, your faces, they're carved into every lie you told, and I will not carry your shame for you." Declan's face collapsed into something I'd never seen before, naked fear. He knew what the folder meant. Court, custody, reputation. Everything he valued was slipping from his grasp. Isla sat frozen, pale as porcelain, as if she had only just realized the cost of her choices. I gathered the folder, tucked it under my arm, and let the silence stretch a moment longer. Then I leaned down, my voice low enough that only they could hear. You thought I'd be quiet. You thought I'd be broken. But I am not your victim. I am your reckoning. With that, I turned and walked away, crimson dress trailing like a banner of defiance. Behind me, whispers rippled across the restaurant, a chorus of judgment neither of them could escape. That was the night their empire of secrets collapsed. And the night I finally stepped out of the wreckage, unafraid, unashamed, and unbroken. The fallout came faster than even I imagined. The morning after that restaurant confrontation, whispers had already spread through Declan's office. Someone had snapped a photo of me standing over the table, folder open, Isla's face pale as chalk. It didn't take long for speculation to bloom into fact. By noon, HR had requested a meeting with Declan. By evening, his corporate card was frozen, his access suspended. Reputation, his most prized possession, was unraveling thread by thread. Isla fared no better. She had built her identity on being poised, dependable, admired. But in a town like ours, betrayal has a long echo. Invitations disappeared. Parents at Elena's school who once waved to her turned cold. The volunteer board she sat on quietly asked her to step down. She moved out of her townhouse within a month, unable to face the eyes that followed her everywhere. At home, the consequences were quieter, but sharper. Connor stopped asking where his father was. Elena no longer set aside her drawings for Declan to see. They adjusted faster than I did in some ways, as if their young hearts knew instinctively that absence could hurt less than broken promises. When Declan tried to visit, Connor retreated to his room, headphones blasting. Elena hid behind me, clutching my hand. He left each time with shoulders slumped, the weight of rejection heavier than any court order. And the court did not spare him either. With Evelyn's help and the folder of evidence, custody was granted in my favor. The house in Greenville became ours officially, while Declan was ordered to pay support. He signed the papers with a shaking hand, avoiding my eyes. Isla did not appear in court, her absence louder than words. As for me, I thought revenge would taste sweet. Instead, it tasted clean, like air after a storm. I had stripped them of the secrecy they used to control me. I had reclaimed my voice, my children, my life. But the real consequence wasn't their downfall. It was my freedom. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching Connor toss a ball to Elena in the yard, Rowan joined me with 2 mugs of coffee. He didn't ask about Declan or Isla. He didn't need to. The kids' laughter floated through the air, and for the first time in months, I felt peace settle into my bones. The aftermath had been brutal, yes, but it left me with something neither Declan nor Isla ever expected, a future unbound by their shadows. Months later, the echoes of betrayal had quieted, but they never disappeared completely. Declan still sent the occasional message, short and hollow. I'm sorry. Isla vanished from town, leaving behind only whispers and shuttered windows. And me, I chose not to chase the silence, but to walk forward. One evening, Rowan and I sat on the porch steps, watching the sun dip behind the trees. Connor and Elena's laughter spilled across the yard like music. Rowan turned to me, his eyes steady. Do you ever think about what's next? I sipped my coffee, smiled faintly. All the time. But for once, I'm not afraid of the answer. Because the truth is, the story isn't about them anymore. It's about me, about reclaiming my worth, protecting my children, and learning that endings can be beginnings in disguise. Declan and Isla thought they destroyed me. Instead, they delivered me back to myself. If you've carried betrayal, if you've tasted loss, know this: you are stronger than the lies told about you. And if my story resonates, please subscribe, like, and share this channel. Your support keeps these truths alive, and together, we prove that resilience always writes the final chapter.